Today it's my honor to have Amber joining the presentation. And she's going to discuss her journey throughout her high school. Mainly, she's going to be talking about USABO and research. I first met Amber when she was in middle school. Like a lot of other kids in the area, she started with math. She eventually qualified for Amy. In high school, her interest really broadened. She started working on biology and she got really interested in biology. She participated in the USABO and she made the camp, which is called USABO National Finalist, not once, but 2 times. Not only she does really well in the biology competition, she also have been doing a lot of research, I would say. Some of them are related to biology and others may not. And she will spend some time to go through her experiences and share some advice on how she gets started and how some other students can get started, some of the younger students. In her junior year, she went to the RSI camp. In the previous presentations, I think we mentioned quite a few times, this is the most prestigious research camp in the United States. And her presentation is named the top 5 paper and presentation at the RSI. That's definitely a huge accomplishment. She also won the 3rd place in the Regeneron Research Award, which is probably the biggest individual research award you can get in the US for high school students. So today she's gonna share all these experiences with us and give us some very specific advice on how to start on biology. As I mentioned before, she actually started in math. Like a lot of other kids I have observed, in high school, they see more things. They suddenly realize, oh, it's not just math. There's computer, there's physics, there's chemistry, there's biology, there's robotics, there's a lot of other things. So her interest really switched to something else. Amber, as you share your experiences, maybe you can help us to talk about how your interests changed and how did you make that change? How did you initially discover that interest and how did you pursue that interest? Before I hand this over to her, let me just mention, she's going to spend probably 40 minutes on her presentation. So let's try not to interrupt her presentation during this. If you have questions, hold your questions, or you can just type it in the chat room. I collected some questions beforehand, which I sent it to her already. During her presentation, she's going to cover a lot of the questions I have collected. When she's done with the presentation, she will take a look at the questions in the chat room, and she will go through some of the questions. All right, so with that said, Amber, I am going to turn this over to you. If you can start sharing your screen. Thank you.
Absolutely. Ted, thank you so much for the introduction. I'm just going to start sharing my screen now. I hope everyone can see this.
Yes, we can see it.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much. So Ted gave a great introduction of who I am and what I'm passionate about and what I've done in my high school career. So in this talk, I just wanted to kind of like go over things that I've been interested in, how my interests changed from math to biology, and some tips and secrets for preparing for the USABO and other research competitions. I know like research is not super big in all areas of the country, so I especially wanted to give tips for how to get started in research. So just for kind of an outline of what I'm going to be talking about today, I thought I'd start with like a little introduction about myself, kind of talk about my own perspective on what I've done throughout my life and how I started in math and then ventured out to other things and kind of like how I got to this point of where I am now, and hopefully share some information that you guys can kind of resonate with. I also wanted to talk about USABO. This icon here is supposed to be a USABO icon, but whatever. And I wanted to talk about like basically how to study for USABO, why you should study for USABO, some prevalent myths that I've heard pertaining to USABO, and also like resources, communities, just how to study USABO and enjoy it and learn it as you do so. And then I wanted to definitely discuss research. I know like research competitions are definitely very different from Olympiads, and perhaps some people have heard of things like the Regeneron ISEF, the Regeneron STS. These are all like big research competitions that generally are done in high school. And I think one of the hardest things about research is like the high barrier to entry. It's difficult to find a mentor. There's not many resources for getting involved in research, and like areas that don't have school programs for research, often it's difficult to get into research. So I kind of wanted to give some pointers for how to start in research. And then some life tips just for fun, like how I manage my time, just like general tips for how to like not die in high school, which I almost did probably, and how to find things that you're passionate about and kind of figure out what you want to do in your life. And then I'll finish with questions. So just to start, oh, all right. Okay. So just to start a little bit about myself, so I grew up in Texas. I lived in Houston, which is like a 30-40 minute drive from Sugarland. And I lived in Texas for 14 years. And like for all of those 14 years, basically, like I was a math girl. That was really the only thing I knew. And you know, when you're young, or at least when I was young, I didn't like really bother to explore anything like biology, computer science, chemistry, physics. I kind of just did whatever I was told to do. And I was like, oh, you know, I'm going to do math and I like math. So I did math and I never really tried anything else. I did like go to math camps a lot. Ever since I was in 6th grade, I went to like a math program every single year. And I really enjoyed mathematics. I feel like it really shaped the way I look at the world, and in particular, how I interpret problems in biology, which I'll talk about in a little bit. So basically, like for the first 14 years of my life, I was a math girl. And then I moved to Long Island, which is like, you know, New York, that area. And I got into, well, okay, so first, like when I moved to New York, I didn't really know anyone and I didn't have any friends, right? So I heard everyone talking about this thing called Science Olympiad. And I was like, you know, like, what is Science Olympiad? And I find out that Science Olympiad doesn't have any math events, but like all of my friends are doing it. So I'm like, okay, now I have to do this Science Olympiad thing. So I start doing Science Olympiad and I do the only science I don't really hate, which is biology. And so I did a couple biology events and like I actually started to really enjoy it. And as like time passed, I would read many textbooks. Like I remember one summer I sat at home and I just read a cell biology textbook for the whole summer. And I really, because one thing about biology, it's so vast, it's so huge, and there's so much to learn. So it really like awakened this kind of curiosity in me and desire to succeed that I hadn't really like felt very strongly in the past. And so I got really into biology. And then some time passed and I started thinking about how I could use math to understand biology, which led to many of my research projects and things I did like in the future. So I will talk about all of this more in detail and how that relates to your life as well. But I just want to talk briefly about the future. So I will be attending MIT and I'm currently interning at Regeneron. And those are both like experiences that I've been able to obtain from things I've done in the past. So I'll definitely talk a little bit about that as well. So just kind of to get into what we're going to be talking about next. So I'm sure a lot of people are here to hear about the USABO, and USABO is like something that I love very dearly. I started doing USABO, I would say in 10th grade, I started like actually studying for it. And I feel like USABO really, really changed the person that I was. It taught me a lot of things like discipline. It taught me to have my own ambitions and to believe in the things that I love to do. And like, I never like really considered doing something like biology before. And certainly my parents had never pushed me to do anything like biology before. So it's kind of a passion that I found on my own. And it really ended up shaping the person I am and the person I want to become. So I feel like discovering something like USABO or chemistry Olympiad or physics Olympiad is very important. So I'm here to talk about USABO and how you can excel in USABO. So basically, oh, and these are just some pictures from camp. And this is a problem I wrote. These are some slides I made. That was my calendar when I was studying for the semifinal exam. Okay, so basically a very brief high-level overview of what the USABO is. So basically there are several levels. As with any Olympiad, like the USABO, the chemistry, physics, the end goal of the USABO is to select the Team USA, which is like the international team. And this will be the top 4 best biologists in the nation, right? So in order to select these people, what the USABO does is they give a series of exams. So first they give what's called the open exam, and anyone can take this. You register through your school, and basically like there's about 4,000 people who take it per year. The official statistic is around 10,000, but there's like a high dropout rate. So it's actually around 4,000 per year who take the open exam. And there's 50 multiple choice questions. You get 60 minutes to answer them, which is like kind of a time crunch, but it's actually not that bad because the questions on the open exam are pretty easy. Your score is equal to the number of questions you get right. And there's a cutoff to make it to the semifinals. And I'll talk about that in a bit. But basically for the open exam and for all of the exams, like after that, the questions will be split into 7 main categories. These are animal anatomy and physiology, plants, cell biology, genetics, biosystematics, ecology, and ethology. And I'll talk about that more as well. But basically be aware that the questions are split into 7 categories and the categories are not weighted evenly. And the difficulty does vary significantly year to year. Like 2013 open exam is way easier than 2021 open exam. It really fluctuates year to year because alumni write the tests. And I'll also talk about that more. So basically after the open exam, the top 10% of the people who take the open exam advance to semifinals. This is around like 400 per year. And the cutoff, get this, the cutoff for semifinals is usually between 19 and 24. Like a 19 on a 50 question exam is a 38%. Like that is how low the cutoff is, which tells you that the exams are quite difficult. So don't be worried. Like if you start doing an exam and you're like, oh crap, I got a 10 on the exam. Like you will improve and you will get there. The cutoffs are very low because exams are very difficult, at least for people who haven't really done like that much studying. And then for the USABO semifinals, there's 3 parts. I won't really go that much into detail because it's all written on the slide, but basically, unlike the open exam, the semifinals has multiple select, it has multiple choice, and it has free response. So it really tests your knowledge at a higher level. And then let's see. So on the semifinals particularly, what's really, really important is no longer, well, your knowledge is always important, but what also becomes important on the semifinals is your speed and your test taking strategies. So I have tips for test taking in a later slide, but one of the biggest things is to not waste your time on questions that you can't answer. So I will get back to that as well. And someone asked in the chat, what are distinctions? So distinctions is basically like you get a certificate. It's like, oh, you scored in the top 50. And the reason why distinctions are important is because you can write them on your college apps, right? So if you place, so basically after semis, the top 20 advance to USABO camp. And USABO camp is a 10-day long training camp. It's located, we don't know where it's going to be in the future, hopefully Harvard, but that hasn't been confirmed yet. Anyway, it's a 10-day training camp. You basically go with the other top 20 scorers. You learn biology, you play Mafia, you do a lot of really, really fun things. You stay up until like 3 a.m. and you learn a lot of biology. And then at USABO camp, the top 4 people at USABO camp are selected for Team USA. So yes, that's a great overview of USABO. Okay, so a bit about the USABO topics. So there are 7 topics, and here's like basically the percentage for each one. Basically, when I say high point yield, that means like a topic is very valuable. And I will say the topics like an animal anatomy and physiology, genetics, cell biology, those are by far the most valuable. I probably spent like 80% of my time studying for animals, cell, genetics, and plants, and I practically ignored the other sections. This is not a strategy that works for everyone, but I feel like there's no strategy that really, universally works. What I did is I spent like a huge amount of my time focusing on these high yield sections, and I kind of like, ecology is always like a very easy section because you can just learn all of ecology practically from one textbook, which is Campbell's biology. And then biosystematics, I just ignored it practically for my whole USABO career. So basically like just focus on the topics that are high yield. And what's really important is that there's like specific textbooks for each of these high yield topics, which I will also get into later, but just be aware that certain topics are worth more than others. Okay, so next I'm going to talk about studying tips and how to like study for the USABO, but I kind of wanted to preface that by addressing a couple myths about the USABO. So I always see this one. Myth number 1 is that USABO is solely about memorization. Now, like, I won't say that USABO is not, a large part of it is memorizing, right? But you cannot make your way through USABO entirely by memorizing. In fact, 65% of last year's USABO finalists were also AMY qualifiers. And what that tells you is that USABO requires a lot of critical thinking, it requires problem solving. And this is biology in itself, because you can memorize something, right? You can memorize like, oh, the Krebs cycle works like this. But if you don't understand why the Krebs cycle works in the way that it does, you won't be able to succeed at the higher level of USABO problems. So I'd be asking like, what kind of, like, then if USABO is not about memorizing, then why do I have to read so many textbooks? Why do I have to like memorize all these vitamins, all of these different types of plant nutrients? Well, like I feel like for the USABO or the biology Olympiad, there's a lot of knowledge, a lot more knowledge that you have to have that may not be necessary for things like USAFO or USAMO. I certainly spent a lot more time memorizing for the biology Olympiad than I did for any other Olympiad. This is definitely true. You will have to memorize, but you have to go above memorizing. You have to learn how to problem solve, to gain intuition from the things that you learn in textbooks to be able to apply to scenarios that you've never seen. That is one of the biggest things about the USABO, is that you have to be able to extend and generalize your knowledge. And you do this by reading a lot of textbooks and gaining that kind of intuition about biology. So for example, a question like this, right? A patient, this is like a case study, right? This patient has all of these symptoms. What kind of disease do they probably have? This is not something you can memorize, right? You're supposed to find what condition they have based on the symptoms given. And there are countless problems that are similar to this one that you cannot simply memorize to get the answer. So much like doing math problems builds your intuition for math, reading biology textbooks builds your intuition for biology. And just to kind of drive the point home, there are tons of biology questions that honestly kind of look like math questions. So these are all questions taken from the 2021 semifinal exam. And the point is that the point is not for you to solve the question right now. The point is to show you that biology takes critical thinking. It takes the ability to look at a scenario and understand what's going on so you can solve the problems given within the scenario. So a lot of USABO is practice, and it's practice exams, and it goes beyond simply memorizing. Great. So I need to speed up a little, so we're going to go a little faster. So basically there are 3 main core things you want to do when you study for USABO. The first is the most important one. You have to read textbooks. And I would say if you don't enjoy reading textbooks, don't study for USABO, because I feel like every single person I've ever spoken to who has been successful at USABO genuinely enjoys reading these textbooks. I love reading textbooks. I used to, in junior year, I would come home really excited, and I'll sit down at my computer and spend 6 hours reading an anatomy and physiology textbook. You don't have to spend 6 hours, but even 20 pages a day can get you to camp. So basically there are several USABO textbooks that you have to read, and the most fundamental foundational textbook is Campbell's Biology. This is the one you'll hear everywhere. And it's the one that everybody reads at the very beginning. So when you're first learning biology, definitely read Campbell's Biology. If you struggle to understand it, watch some Khan Academy, look at some online resources, but Campbell's Biology is the way to go. And then after you finish Campbell's Biology, the next part is kind of up to you. You have to identify what you feel like interests you most or you are the weakest at. So for me, after I finished Campbell's Biology, I read Vander's to get better at anatomy and physiology. And I really enjoyed reading Vander's, and I did it because I like anatomy and physiology. And then I went on to read Raven's, Brooker's, Albert's, and Leninger's. And I read each of these textbooks more than once. I think I read Vander's 5 times. And the reason this reading textbooks is important is not to memorize the textbook word to word. It's to understand the concepts presented in the textbook. I'd say just like physics is built on several fundamental principles, so is biology. Physiology is built on homeostasis, and these fundamental techniques, the more you read about them, the more you understand them and know how to apply them to problems. Also, there's a lot of information in the textbooks that you really do have to know for semifinals. So yeah, these are all the textbooks that you're going to want to read. Most people are able to make semis just by reading Campbell's. If your goal is to make it to semifinals, I would say just stick with Campbell's, maybe read Vander's if you're interested. If you want to make camp, I would say read all of these. And there are specific chapters within each one that you will want to read. And then once you're done reading textbooks, or as you're reading textbooks, you should also do practice tests. You can find past exams on the USABO website, and there's really good genetics practice. Genetics is the hardest section. There's really good genetics practice on the MIT OpenCourseWare. And if you want to practice for making camp, I would recommend IBO exams. And this is a huge recommendation here on the very right, is to join the Biology Olympiad Discord server. There's finalists in there you can talk to. We have mock biology competitions, we have resources, problems of the day. Definitely join. And these slides will be released, so you can join it on your own time. And then also these will all like be released with the slides. I won't go over them now for the sake of time, but you can look through like information about each textbook, see which ones you want to read, etc. So yeah. And then just a couple secrets about USABO that I wanted to share with you guys. The first big one is like all exams are actually written by national finalists who have graduated from USABO. So what that means is that like the semifinals exams are all written by last year's national finalists. So that means that I will be writing next year's exams. That also means that a lot of the sections in exams like cell biology, genetics, physiology that are very popular among like undergrads and grad students are also much more difficult on the USABO exam. And if you know like, oh, like this person who is an immunologist is going to be writing the semifinals exam, you know to study for immunology, right? Like, although this is not something that you should guide your studying on, it's something to be aware of, that the exams are written by national finalists. And then also, once again, a plug to join the Discord server. All of us are on there. All of the finalists are there. So get to know us, talk to us. We can't give out like any information about the problems we're going to write, but definitely we can give you information about how to study. Okay. And for the semifinals, if you are somebody who is aiming to make it to camp, there are a lot of test taking strategies that you should employ. And one of the biggest ones is don't waste your time on questions that are really long. On the semifinal exam, the grading is really, or the scoring is really messed up. Like there will be questions that are pages long that are worth 2 points, and a question that's like one sentence long that's worth 5. The grading is always really messed up. But the important thing is that each question tells you how much it's worth. So just use your brain. Like if this question is worth nothing and it's very difficult, don't do it. Just skip it. Like I know it sounds dumb, but like when you're in that moment and you're doing the test, like you're not going to realize that you're doing something stupid. So train yourself to know when to skip problems. And this is good advice, not only for USABO, but I would say it's like good advice in general. Part C, the free response is always worth it. Like if you have, I would say set aside the last 15 minutes and go directly to part C. And like guess on everything you don't know. You don't lose any points on the semifinals if you guess. So guess on everything you can. And use your discretion on the semis. Like you know what you're good at. You also know what you're bad at. So plan out how you're going to take the test before you actually take it. The semifinals is all about your test taking strategy. All right. So, the last one is, this one's kind of big. So I know a lot of people probably will want to put their USABO achievements on their college app one way or another. So sometimes like you can take the semifinals and you get your score back, but you never get your rank. Well, the thing is that every year they actually release histograms that you can use to find out like approximately where you ranked. So like if you were rank 100 or something, USABO doesn't give a distinction for that, but you can still like write it on your college app. I know a friend who wrote that he was like top, 75, and he got into MIT. Not sure if there was any like correlation, but it doesn't hurt to put that there. Yeah. Also like other Olympiads give distinctions for top 250, top 200. I don't know why USABO doesn't. They only give distinction for top 50 and camp. Okay. Awesome. So the next part of my presentation, and I know I went through that really quickly, so if anyone has questions, feel free to ask in the Q&A. So the next part I wanted to talk about is research. So research is an entirely different ballpark from Olympiads. There are a lot of things in research you don't encounter in the Olympiads, and it's definitely more of a like subjective activity, but I definitely enjoy doing research. And here are some pictures of like me at Regeneron STS, and yeah, really cool. Okay, so all right, so just a brief overview of what this section is going to be talking about. First, I'm going to give a comparison of like research versus Olympiads, like what is mostly really important that's different. And through this slide, you can figure out like, do I like research? Do I want to do research? Is it really for me? research is hard. It's a big time commitment. I'll talk about the very common like research competitions, again, some myths, and then the important ones are how to find a mentor and how to get into summer programs for research. Awesome. Okay, so, oh, right. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my own journey in research, just so you can kind of see one example of how you can get into research. But there are many, many different ways. But how I got into research personally is I did my first research project at the MathWorks Honor Summer Math Camp at Texas State University. So I did this one in a group, and basically like I applied to this program, I think in 9th grade. And then my second year, which was between 10th and 11th grade, I got to do my first research project. It was in computational epidemiology. So I like used statistics to look at how COVID-19 death and spread varies across regions of the US. And I was able to like learn R, which is a very important data science language. And I presented at a consortium and I published a first author preprint. I also, after doing my first project at HSMC, I then went to Stony Brook University. I cold emailed a mentor. So this first one was through a summer program. This one, I just like emailed a guy at Stony Brook University. I was like, yo, can I work with you? And he was like, sure. And I worked with him throughout the school year. And I did like a different research project on mathematically modeling a cell, basically. And he like wrote me a recommendation letter, and I was really like inspired by his research. Like, even though I didn't get a paper or anything like that, I was really like amazed by what his lab did. I mean, you're building a cell from like equations. It was like crazy to me. So I wrote about it a lot in my essays, and it was like something that really, really inspired my interest. And eventually both of these projects helped me get into RSI, which is where I did my, I guess, quote unquote, biggest project in computational biology. And this eventually brought me to the Regeneron STS, Regeneron ISAF, and now I'm interning at Regeneron doing a new project this summer. So that is kind of my own journey in research. So now I wanted to talk a little bit about like research versus Olympiads, which I think some of you may be more familiar with. So one of the biggest things I would say about research is that there's a high barrier to entry. What that means is that like it is hard to get started. Olympiads, like you can just find textbooks online and then you can just read them and then you can take the test. There's like almost no barrier to entry for Olympiads unless like your school is actively against you doing it. But research competitions, on the other hand, you have to find a mentor and you have to like print a poster and you have to find out how to present and you have to make a paper, and like there's a lot that has to happen before you can do research competitions. So that's what I mean when there's a high barrier to entry, is that it's hard to get started, but it's very worth it when you do. The biggest thing is finding a mentor. And then research is also like highly
Olympiad in 7th grade.
research is also highly
It sounds
sorry. All right, that's okay. So research is also very publicized. It receives a lot of public recognition. Like I remember for USABO, I was never interviewed by any news outlets, but for things like STS, like news is all over that. I don't really know why, because I feel like Olympiads are kind of harder, but that's my own opinion. But definitely both of them are very, very meritorious in their own way. Research, oh, this is a big one. Research gives a lot of scholarships and monetary awards. Like you can make it onto the international biology team and get no money. If you win STS, you get $250,000. Not to say that money is the reason why you should be participating in these competitions. Like definitely not, but just be aware that you can receive scholarships if you do research. Like if you are perhaps like financially struggling, these can be super useful to you. But that again goes back to the point of research being hard to get into in the first place, which I will definitely try to help with. Research is also easier to win awards. You get awards at the regional level, at the international level. Like it's definitely much easier to win any kind of recognition. And there's more people who do it, and there's a lot more disparity based on socioeconomic status. If you're located like near university, it's much easier to get into research. Okay, so next question is like, what can you do with the research that you conduct? Like we already mentioned, you can submit it to research competitions, Regeneron STS, ISAF, JSHS. There's a whole ton of them. So I listed a bunch of competitions here. I guess like all of these competitions require you to do research other than MIT Think. MIT Think is a competition hosted by MIT, and they actually like, they just have you submit an idea, and then like you submit an idea, and then if they like your idea, they give you $1,000 to make the idea reality. I don't know, it's pretty cool. It's very prestigious too. And then you can also publish a paper. If you're working with a mentor, definitely ask them, like be like, hey, don't be afraid to bug your mentor. They want to help you. That's why they are mentoring you. Like ask them, yo, like, are you gonna ever make this a paper? Can I make this a paper? Like, don't be afraid to bug your mentors. Just don't be like really annoying. Also like attend conferences. These are very important. Some conferences have specific like programs for high schoolers that you can attend. Like Harvard has some research conference for high schoolers. Be aware, go and find these opportunities. And you can put them on your resume or like on your college app, things like that. Yeah, this is really important. Like, don't be afraid to ask your mentor for opportunities. They are here to help you. And if they're not here to help you, find a new mentor, okay? All right, cool. So I will be talking about how to find mentors very soon. Okay, so yeah, here's just some top science fairs. I won't really go into detail here, but Regeneron ISEF and Regeneron STS are definitely the two biggest science fairs. They call Regeneron ISEF like the Olympics of science fair because there's many different categories. There's computational biology, there's math, there's physics, right? And then you can, people like go from their own countries and they represent their countries. Like people from Saudi Arabia come in like full cultural garb. It's really cool. And it really feels like you're at the Olympics. It's kind of crazy. It's very prestigious. There's around 1,400 finalists each year. But being an ISEF finalist is probably like equivalent to being like top 50 in some Olympiad. It's actually a very big honor. And that just kind of goes to show like how many people participate in research. Let's see, STS is different. You can only apply as a senior, whereas ISEF you can do it any year in high school, and STS has huge monetary awards. A big difference is that STS looks at like you as an entire scientist. You submit like a written application with essays, recommendations, things like that, whereas ISEF is just purely about your research. Yeah, so this is kind of just a schematic that shows how each camp works. The biggest difference between STS and ISEF is that STS is only a written application with recommendation letters, essays, research paper, things like that, whereas ISEF is like in-person presentation type judging. Okay, yeah, so here we go. Here are the strategies for how to find a mentor. And this is like the most important part. And I would say like if you're located near any university or any like big hospital, for example, or some like research center like MD Anderson or the medical center like Mayo Clinic, I don't know, like if you live near like UT Austin, or like if you're like me and you live near Stony Brook University, you can find a mentor. Like it's completely doable. It's always possible, like if you live near those areas, to find a mentor. So definitely one of the biggest strategies that people employ is cold emailing. And what that means is that you write an email, you're like, dear Dr. Balazzi, hi, I read your research paper about blah, 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 and I'm so fascinated. Like, I would love to work in your lab. Here's my resume and here's my transcript. Of course, you want to write a little more than that, but basically it's when you email a professor at a nearby university, or it could be at a far away university, and you basically say that you're really interested in their work and you want to work with them, and then like 5% of the professors will respond. Some tips for cold emailing is like look at nearby universities, look at their departments. If you're interested in quantum mechanics, like email mentors in quantum mechanics. One of the biggest tips I have is to look up mentors who have previously mentored like STS winners or ISEF finalists. Like you can, like, because the reason why is that these mentors have previously mentored high school students, right? So not only are they more experienced, they're also more likely to take another high school student, because the last time they mentored one, that student won something, right? It's very actually quite rare to find professors who are willing to take high school students, because like we don't really know anything, right? They have to put a lot of resources to help us, and professors are always really busy. So if there's a professor who has helped someone in the past, they are like 20 times more likely to help you than a professor who hasn't. So be very, very aware of that. You can just search it up like online, STS winner mentors, and it'll come up. Yeah, use your connections. If your parents are professors at like, I don't know, MD Anderson, like ask them to help you, right? Like if your parents are professors, they will definitely have connections in their department or in the same university, and they can help you find a mentor. I got one of my mentors through a connection with my mom. Like there's nothing wrong with it, and it's a good thing to leverage if you have such connections. Also, yeah, so these are general tips for how to write your email. If anyone wants, you can email me and I can send you a template. Yeah, so summarize your achievements, make sure to attach a resume and a high school transcript. Talk about anything. It doesn't have to be relevant to their research. Like if you do science Olympiad, like just talk about what you do in high school and why you want to work with them. Yeah, you have to send a lot of emails. Yeah, and then the other big way to get involved with research is to do summer programs. And I will say, I think summer programs is better than cold email links simply because, well, first, like through summer programs, not only do you learn how to do research, you also like learn how to present, how to write a paper. You have deadlines you have to work towards. You get a community of friends, you get tutors, like you get a lot more resources if you get into a summer program. And the second is that a summer program holds you accountable and holds your mentor accountable. Like if you cold email someone and just do kind of like an independent internship, like there's nobody holding you or your mentor accountable to do good work. Like it's very common that either the student just stops communicating or the mentor stops communicating. It's happened to a lot of my friends. But if you do a summer program, there are people holding you accountable. You have deadlines, you got to deliver things, right? So people who do summer programs, and there are many exceptions, but in general, have higher quality results. So I provided a list of programs that you can look into later in these slides. It's very important to do like research or Olympiads or do something with your summers. Yeah, so this is all like general advice. I will fill in these 2 links later. But summer programs are super important. And all right, this is kind of just comparing like success rate of cold emailing versus using summer programs. I kind of like discussed this already. So yeah, if anyone has questions, feel free to ask. Okay, and then these slides will be sent out, but these are some like summer programs that I would highly, highly recommend. Wow, awesome. Okay, so that's it for research. Now I kind of wanted to give a couple like general life tips. We're kind of nearing the end here. So the first is use a calendar. Like when you're in high school, you have very limited time to do a lot of things. And the busier you get and the more activities you do, like the less time you're gonna have. So you have to manage your time. So use a calendar. My calendar, let me find it. It's not on here, but yeah, definitely like use a calendar. You can just use it like as an agenda, like kind of put all the activities that you need to do into your calendar if you want. And then also like your summers are really, really, really important because if you think about it, like during the school year, you're kind of doing the same thing as everyone else. You're taking classes, you're doing clubs, like, but that's, I mean, maybe you're doing research, but that's pretty much it, right? Or you're doing Olympiads. But during the summer is when you can really differentiate yourself from other people. You can volunteer, you can go to a summer camp, you can study for your Olympiads, you can intern at a lab. There's so much you can do with your summers. Like, please don't sit at home. Do something with your summers because you will always, always gain from it and it'll be fun. You'll have friends. So like always do something during your summer. This is so critical. The last one is questions from anyone. All right, so I see a lot of questions in the chat.
Amber, actually, before you start, let me ask you a question real quick. Why did you choose MIT over Harvard? Because I know some of the parents would have that question.
Okay, well, that's well, that's a big question. So So I applied to Harvard like restrictive early and I got in, and then I got into MIT regular. So I would say the biggest reason, I always actually really wanted to go to MIT, but I would say like the biggest reason is when I visited the two schools, I visited MIT and I felt this like very vibrant feeling of culture. Like when you go to MIT, there's every single dorm has its own personality. Every single person is like such a vibrant version of themselves. And like it just feels like such a strong, vibrant, and like cohesive group of people. And everyone is like so passionate about what they do. It just like felt a lot like a wonderful place to be in. And I think like especially for people like me who have been doing things like Olympiads and research my whole life, whenever I go to like school or something, I feel like I kind of get put into this classification of people as like a nerd or like a high achieving person. And when I visited Harvard, I kind of felt like the same feeling of like clickiness. I would describe high school as having cliques. Like you have, you know, the rich people, you have the athletes, you have the smart people, you have like all of these cliques, right? And when I went to Harvard, it felt like the exact same as high school. Like it was so homogenous and just felt like everybody found their group of people and just stayed with that group of people for all 4 years. And that's obviously not how it is for everyone at high school, but I mean everyone at Harvard, but that's definitely like the feeling that I was getting. But when I went to MIT, it just felt like everyone was so accepting, and I felt very willing and brave to like step out of my boundaries and do things that I had never done before. So I feel like MIT's culture definitely like called to me a lot more. That was certainly the main reason. I think Harvard, their faculty is wonderful. Like if you're doing something like ecology, definitely like Harvard is probably the best for things like that. But for me, I was doing like computational biology, which is pretty much like equal at either school. And then I loved MIT's culture like so much. So that's why I went to MIT over Harvard. And I think like I think there's like kind of a feeling or some kind of stigma that Harvard is like number one. Certainly they have law schools, they have like medical school, they have a much bigger branch, but do consider that you're going to the school for undergrad and you want to find a place where you can be the best version of yourself.
That makes
really
sense.
depends.
Yeah.
All right. I see a lot of questions. Should I just go down the list?
Yep.
Okay. So the first question, I think I kind of answered what are distinctions, but I see how much USABO content does Campbell's cover? Let's see. So Campbell's covers, technically it covers everything on the USABO, or it's supposed to, but in recent years, USABO has been getting much harder. The reason for this is because, as I said, alumni write the USABO test, and alumni like to be very crazy. So Campbell's like is supposed to cover everything, but it does not. Like it absolutely is not enough for semifinals, or at least like to make it to camp, if that is your goal. If your goal is to make it to semis, I would say Campbell's is adequate. If you want to make it to camp, you have to read, I would say like Vanders, Leninger, Raven, Brooker. You have to read at least those four. Yeah, so I guess my answer to you is it should cover everything, but it doesn't. Okay, so the PowerPoint link will be sent out. Okay, so would you recommend participating in clubs and studying for different Olympiads at the same time? I mean, like, yeah, I did. Well, okay, you probably, Olympiads is a big time commitment. After 10th grade, I cut down on how many clubs I did. So in 10th grade, I did like debate, I did DECA, I did science Olympiad, math team. Yeah, I did a lot of things. And then in 11th grade, I cut it down to just math team and science Olympiad. I mean, like if there are many clubs that you're passionate about, then don't give them up. But like I would say if you want to study for Olympiads, it's a big time commitment and you should only do clubs if you really love them. I quit DECA because I hated business. Well, I didn't hate it, but I didn't enjoy it as much as I enjoyed other things. So my answer to you is do the clubs that you love. And if you love studying for Olympiads, then do that as well. There's no like really good answer to this because some clubs require more commitment than others. How long do you spend studying daily? So this varies. Like time to time. But in junior year, I spent about like 2 to 4 hours a day. If it was not like 2 to 4 hours a day on a regular like weekday / weekend. And then on the like 3 weeks before semifinals, I think I studied like 6 hours a day. Senior year, I studied 0 hours a day until the month or like the 2 weeks before, where I studied like 8 hours a day. So my study habits were horrible. But that's like a general like benchmark. I think I studied more than a typical camper did, but I'm not like certain about that. I just like really enjoyed studying textbooks. Like if you hate reading textbooks, like you're not going to be able to study for that long. Like I literally would enjoy sitting at my computer reading Leninger's Principles of Biochemistry from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Like I really like it. It's fun. You learn a lot, you experience a lot. It kind of changes your like view of the world. So I would say like study however long you want to study. Like don't try to force yourself to study too long. Well, I don't know. Like I did have to force myself some days, but like start low, start with like maybe like an hour a day and go up as needed. Don't start with 8 hours. You're going to hate it. Start with like 1 a day. Could you go back? Yeah, so the slides will be sent out. So if you want to like take a closer look at the summer program slides, you can definitely look at them like on the email. So I got a direct message. So what do you think made your STS application stand out from other ones? Okay. Right. So the STS, okay, so I guess this requires me to talk a little bit more about the Regeneron STS. So the Regeneron STS, it basically looks at you as a holistic scientist. So they take not only biology, they also have physics, math, computer science, chemistry, people apply. And what they're looking for above all is innovation, passion, and like kind of an entrepreneurial leadership spirit. Unlike ISEF, which is purely about your research, STS also asks you for essays, recommendation letters, your activities, your achievements, things like that. So I would say definitely, okay, so there's those components, right? I would say for me, the first would probably be my research paper. I worked really hard on my research paper, but more than that, I think the research I did was truly impactful, and it really like does bring a lot to society, or it has the potential to do so. So my research itself, it will like for everyone, their research should be the biggest factor in their application. So I think for me that was definitely a big one, was just like my research paper and the research I did. The other one was probably my achievements. At the time I applied, I was a USABO finalist and I had done RSI and I had gotten top 5 paper and presentation. So that probably told them at least like this girl's research has won awards in the past, and she, in addition to doing research, she has a very strong understanding of biology itself. One thing I noticed at STS is that many of the other people like did Olympiads in addition to doing research. Like you had a 3-time IMO gold medalist, you had a chem camper, you had an international physics Olympiad person. It cannot be a coincidence, right? Like they're definitely like looking at these Olympiad people and like weighting that strongly, because like excelling at an Olympiad is what tells people that you know what you're doing, right? So probably achievements, my paper, my recommendation letters were very strong. I have really, or like there's a lot of 2 teachers at my school who like mean the world to me, and I love them so much, and like I think they wrote me really good rec letters. So those are probably the 3 things. Having good relations with your teachers is very important. Oh, and my mentor wrote like a great recommendation as well. How much time do you sleep? Yeah. So in junior year, I think I slept, it really depends like on what is happening, but I slept anywhere between like 1 hour a day to like 8 hours a day. This is a very big range. Like when I was studying for the USABO, like the month before, probably like 4 hours a day with a 2-hour nap when I got home. Like I didn't have a good sleep schedule. I remember I would like I'd get home at 4 p.m., sleep until 8 p.m., and then stay up like all night. I remember I got really stressed out at one point. I would say like take care of yourself. Don't glorify like losing sleep. I used to do that. Like in senior year, I would feel guilty if I slept 6 hours because I'm like, oh crap, I slept too much. Never glorify like not sleeping or things like that. It can be really bad for you. But yeah, I really didn't sleep very much. But try to sleep whenever you can. Don't be like me. When did you start biology research? So biology research. I never did biology research. Like I never worked in a lab. The research I did would better be characterized as like computer science for bioinformatics. Like I did coding pretty much. But I started doing like research in general. I started between 10th and 11th grade. And then I did my major project between 11th and 12th grade, and that project is what I submitted to STS. So in total, I've been doing research for about like 2 years. Which part plays a key role to be accepted by an Ivy college? GPA, this is a good question. Okay, yeah. First of all, every college, what they're looking for is different, and for each individual person, what's important in your application is also different. But I would definitely say GPA is not extremely important. It's not like, I would say perhaps GPA is a threshold. Like you should be above a certain GPA, a very like permissive threshold. But like if you are valedictorian of your school and you have like nothing else, it will be very hard to get into an Ivy League. So basically like maybe GPA is necessary, but not sufficient. Let's see. So you listed a lot of things here. Things like GPA, SAT, ACT, I would say those are like important, but not enough. What is really, really important is the passion you exhibit. Like whether it's in math, like if your passion is in math, then USAMO is important. If your passion is in biology, then nobody cares if you made USAMO or not, right? So what really matters is like how you do your passions. Like if you love biology, then what's important is being a USABO national finalist or doing research or doing science Olympiad, extracurricular activities, research. That is the most important, is what you do in your free time, what you do in your summers. I will say that that's definitely the most important, but you can't neglect your GPA and your SAT. But definitely things like Olympiads, research, science Olympiad, or like math team, Amy, USAMO, that stuff is like top tier important. And doing summer programs, like that may be even more important. Doing things like RSI or like being at like the Momentum Learning Camp, things like that are extremely important because colleges love to see what you do during your summer. MIT has a specific part in your application where they ask, what did you do during your summers? Harvard has a supplemental that's like, what did you do in your last 2 summers? So your summers are really critical for your college application. So I would say short answer, not GPA or SAT, but rather like your summers, your extracurriculars, your Olympiads, and your research. Oh yeah, fun fact, I was not even top 20 at my school. I don't even think I was top 30, but I got into Harvard, MIT, and Stanford. So I really don't think GPA is that important. But it certainly, like, you can't be failing your classes. Okay, so from Roshni, how can you present your research in the best possible way to have it stand out or show its impact? Let's see. Present your research in the best possible way. Yeah, so this is actually a really good question. Basically, this is hard. Okay, so when you go to a research fair, you're gonna have your poster behind you. And like, imagine like if this is my poster here, and you're gonna be talking to the judge in front of you. And like maybe you'll have a face mask, maybe you won't. And then there will be like your props on the table behind you. The most important thing is to be interactive with your judge, like shake their hands, point at your poster, use your poster, right? Like talk to the judge and like interact with them like a regular person. They want to know about your research and you are sharing your research with them. Another like really important tip I have is to know your audience. Like usually when judges come up to you, they're going to introduce themselves. Like, I am a geneticist at the Broad Institute, or like, I am a computer scientist at Georgia Tech, or like, I am a marine biologist, right? So if you know your audience, you can cater your presentation to them. For example, like, my presentation is in computational biology. I basically made this computational tool to analyze biological data so that people can make better drugs, right? So when the computer scientist came up to me, I was like, oh, like, this is how the algorithm works. And I went into like the math and the statistics, and I just like glossed over the biology stuff. And he was like, cool. And when the biologist came, I glossed over the statistics and math, and I like focused entirely on like the biology and the insights to biology and medicine and disease and things like that. So one thing that's really important is to be able to know your judge and cater your presentation to your audience. It's super, super important. Also, like, some judges like to chit chat. Like, I ended up talking to one of my judges about Henrietta Lacks. Like, know what's appropriate for each judge. You can usually read them based on their body language and how they dress. What's your favorite flavor of ice cream? Great question. I like cookie dough ice cream. It has like those chunks. It's really good. Do you have a favorite branch of biology? Ooh, good question. So it depends. In research, my favorite branch is definitely bioinformatics, like using mathematical tools to model biology. I love that. In terms of USABO, my favorite branch is probably animal physiology. How did you spend your middle school? Right. So for the like, basically, I didn't discover that I liked biology until 10th grade. And that's like kind of when my passion exploded, I guess. And I read like 10 billion textbooks every day. No, I'm joking. But like, high school is when I found out I liked biology. In middle school, I went to math camps every summer. I worked on AOPS books. I like played for the win. I did Alchemists. I did Amy. I did AMCs. I did momentum learning. During middle school, I was like your typical competition math kid. And then in high school, I like explored into biology and research. So when did you compete USABO? Is semifinal helpful for college apps? Great question. So I did USABO. I started doing USABO in 10th grade. 10th grade was the first time I took it. And then I 10th grade, I made semifinals, but I didn't make camp. And then 11th grade, I made camp. And then 12th grade, I made camp again. So I've been doing USABO for, well, it's been 3 years now. Semifinal is definitely helpful. It's not only helpful for college apps, it's also helpful for applying to summer research programs. That's also something to consider, is that like, in order to get into a summer research program, you have to have something to start with. And usually Olympiad awards are a good way to start. Because as I said, you can't get into research unless you already have something. So how are you supposed to get something? You can do Olympiads, or you can volunteer, right? So all of the things that are helpful for college apps are also helpful for summer research programs. Think of summer research programs as like an early college app. Oh, one more thing. I know I'm like getting a little off topic, but when you apply for a summer research program or any type of like summer program, they're going to ask you to write a bunch of essays. And even if you don't get into the program, those essays can be very useful for when you apply to college, because applying to some kind of program makes you think about what you want to do and the person you want to be. And then that kind of primes your thinking for college apps. So apply to summer programs, definitely. First year USPO, I made semis. Can I send my Discord again? Yeah, actually, let me send that in the chat. Feel free to message me. It might take a couple days for me to get back to you, but I'm always happy to help. Okay, let's see. What do you need to get into MIT? Well, that's a big question. So it really like differs, once again, person to person. And there is no specific set of achievements that will get you into MIT. I know like IBO people who have been rejected from MIT. So what you need is a passion, you need insightful essays, and you need achievements to back up those good essays. And you need good recommendation letters. Like it's the same thing as any other school. Well, one thing about MIT is that generally they value Olympiads more than other schools. I think this is probably true. So I guess like Olympiads could be good, but like generally you can't rely on one thing. Like you can't make IMO and then like just write totally crappy essays and expect to get into MIT. I mean, maybe you could, but like don't risk it. You must have good essays, good extracurriculars, good recommendations. You really need the full package. Could you give us a textbook list you learned since you prepared for the USABO? Yeah, so it's all in the slides. The slides will be sent out or they'll be posted online or something, and you can find them and go through the textbook list. When you present your research poster, were the judges very strict? Wow, good question. So actually, it depends on the judge. There was one judge at STS who he was so terrifying that people were like, when you talk to him, don't look at him in the eye. Like he was so scary. Some judges are just there because they want to make your life miserable. I'm kidding, but like that's what it feels like. And then other judges are really nice. So some judges, like, remember that the judges are all people, right? One of the judges, she came up to me and she was like, oh my God, like your research uses such standard methods. Like this is so, well, she didn't say it like in that way, but she was like, oh, your research is very standard. And then she was like, what did she say? Did you use any methods that like were revolutionary or like novel? And I was like, I don't know. And then she went to the next person and she was like, oh, your research uses a lot of non-standard techniques. Like, why did you choose to use non-standard techniques? Some judges just like to pick on you. Like some judges will be strict, other judges will be very nice. It's up to you to be able to read those judges and decide how you want to talk to them, but always be professional. So yeah, judges were very strict, but some judges weren't. So yeah. When did you start consistently studying for USABO? Probably in the summer between 10th and 11th grade is when I like actually started studying. I read Campbell's for the first time starting January of 2021. I read Campbell's I started reading Campbell's for the first time January of 2020. And then I finished it in like April, and then I read Albert's that summer, and then I read like Vander's, and then I read Raven's, and then I read Campbell's again, and then it just all like mushed up into a pile of like reading books. But yeah, I was also wondering how the ISEF process works because the website has been confusing me. Okay, so it depends on what region you're in. For some regions it's different from others, but for my region, basically what they did was they had 2 rounds. The first round was virtual and I had to film a video of me like this talking about my research. Like I shared my screen and I made slides and I gave a 7-minute presentation of my research, and then the judges like score your research and they pick the top 8 in each category, and then the top 8 go and compete in person where you have a poster and you have judges and stuff like that. And then based on the in-person judging, they selected a delegation to go to ISEF. So as for how to format the project, your regional fair like might require, you have to look at your regional fair, not the ISEF website. I don't know, like if you're in Texas, that would be Texas SEF. Like, yeah, you have to look at your regional fair. That they should have better instructions. Is your major going to be computational bio? What is that? Right. So at MIT, I'm going to double major. That will probably change once I realize I don't have enough time. But as of now, I'm going to double major like computational biology and applied math. Specifically, what MIT calls computational biology is computer science and molecular biology. So what that means is basically like biology, or like especially molecular biology, generates so much biological data. It's like so many huge spreadsheets. Just imagine like a 30,000 by 18,000 spreadsheet for every single cell. Like why, right? Like, and generates so much data. You need somebody who's good at computer science to analyze that data. So I want to be that person who is analyzing the data. So that's kind of what computational biology is you use computers to analyze tons of biological data. You can also do like modeling and things like that, but it's up to each person. Do you think speech and debate club helps? I mean, like, sure. When I was young, I did speech and debate and I liked it. Like, if your child likes speech and debate, they should do it. Like, if you like speech and debate, go for it. You don't have, like, really, you're gonna be most
那你有帮我
successful.
吗？太多东西了。
You're gonna be the most successful if you do what you love. That's one thing I've learned. When I did math, I did it very half-heartedly. Like, I kind of wanted to do it, but I didn't really love it. When you find out what you want to do, that is when you become extremely successful. So, like, there's not one activity that's better than the other. All activities can bring you to the national or international level. It just really depends on which activity you can go to the national or international level in. So, like, if you feel like you are good at speech and debate and it's something that you want to do, then go for it. Like there's not only one path to get into a good college, right? It really, every single activity has the highest level of achievement, and all of them are relatively worth the same. So it's like up to you what you feel like you're good at and what you want to do, because you can reach the highest level of achievement in anything. Okay, so may I ask, what classes did you take in junior and senior year? Did your extra oh yeah, very much so. So the question was, what classes did you take in junior and senior year, and did your extracurriculars get into the way of your schoolwork? The answer is yes. Okay, so in junior and senior year, I took like AP Chem, AP Physics 1, AP Physics C, AP Biology, AP US History, AP Psychology, AP Microeconomics, just like a bunch of AP classes. Just like whatever, like those typical AP classes that everyone takes. I had like, I think I took 7 AP classes in junior year and 5 or 6 in senior year. Yes, my extracurriculars very much got in the way of my schoolwork, but that was my own fault. Like when I went home, like I didn't do my schoolwork. I did Olympiads, and then I would study for my test the morning of the test. And then in class, I would work on my extracurriculars. Like I had a horrible, like I was never really doing what I was supposed to be doing. But that's a me thing. I don't think you should let your extracurriculars get in the way of school. Especially for me, like I was science Olympiad captain and math team president in 12th grade. So I had a lot of responsibilities for these clubs that often like emergencies would happen in the middle of the day. Like for science Olympiad, we had to submit a ping pong parachute video at 12 p.m. but my team members thought it was 12 a.m. And then I found out in the middle of physics, and I was like in a panic, and I was like crying in physics, like messaging my team members like, please like submit your video. Definitely like they got in the way of my schoolwork, but that was by my own choice. Like it is up to you what you want to prioritize. And like it doesn't have to get in the way of your schoolwork. It's just like for me it did. But it's not necessarily a bad thing. Like if you can handle it, I would say it's okay. Yeah. So when are you reading the textbook for USABO? Do you write notes as you're reading? Great question. Yeah. So when I read it, does it mean like what time of the day? Or well, as for what time of the day, I read it, so I get back home and then I take a nap, and then I wake up at 8 p.m. and then I read the textbook until like 2 a.m. But like you can do it at any time, and I didn't really have like a set reading schedule. If you meant like when as in what grade, or like what order to read them in, you can start like reading them now. And always read Campbell's first, and then read specialized textbooks like Vander's or Raven's. I would recommend let me actually type this in the chat. I would say like first read Campbell's, and then read Vander's, and then read Raven's, and then read Brooker's, and then like read Albert's or Leninger's if you feel like it. And then as you read each textbook, feel free to go back to previous ones. Alrighty.
Amber, just sorry to interrupt. Just with time now, it's 8:15, so we're already running 15 minutes past the hour. So maybe you can just pick a few questions and
Alright.
go through them. Thank you.
Sure. I'll look for like interesting questions. For this question about is it too late to start looking at research? It's never too late. What is your, let's see. How do you manage time efficiently for studying and such? I think I mentioned this in my presentation, but I use a calendar. So I think in one of my slides, like you can actually see my calendar. It's probably like somewhere in the very beginning, but I might have to go a long way back. But there it is. So that on the bottom left is my USABO calendar. So I basically like write down for each day. You can't really see it, but I write down for each day like the things I want to study, like genetics, and then also I put my homework on there. So the most important thing in high school is please use a calendar. If I didn't use a calendar, I think I would have failed my classes a long time ago. So using a calendar is extremely important. That's my biggest tip. My other tip is don't start taking naps. As soon as you start taking naps, you're never going to be able to stop. So try not to start taking naps. Like try to maintain a regular sleep schedule, but I didn't manage to achieve it, but if you do, props to you. Okay. My son made semifinals past 2 years, but had very little improvement. Top 200, what is your advice? Right. So my advice in this case, and this is a very common case actually, would be read Vander's. I always like Vander's is a very good textbook. Especially you have to find out what your son is struggling in. Like, is he struggling with cell biology? Is he struggling with genetics? Find out what he's struggling with and read the specialized textbook for that topic. Take practice tests as well. Oh, and there's a really good biology summer training camp. It's called like biology. That one's good. Momentum Learning also has a good one. There's a lot of resources out there that you can use if you're in that, kind of bottleneck. But read specialized textbooks and take like IBO exams. I know that sounds crazy, but IBO exams are actually not that hard, and they're very, very informative. Like they have detailed solution manuals. They have like multiple like ways you can look at the problem. They're very, very, very good. Like take those IBO exams. They're not that hard, I promise. And then join the USABO Discord server. Yeah, vegan cookie dough ice cream, definitely. Let's see. Let me choose one or two more. So how much time did you spend on sports? 0. You don't have to do sports if you don't want to, I would say. What summer camps did you go to in middle school? Although, like, if you like sports, don't drop them. What summer camps did you go to in middle school? I did Math Path, and then the next year I did MathWorks JSMC, and then after that I also did Awesome Math. But I did Math Path, and then I did Awesome Math, and then I did MathWorks JSMC, and then I did HSMC, and then I did HSMC again, and then I did RSI, and now I'm working at Regeneron. That's what I've done during my summers. Let's see. Is it possible for an 8th grader to find a research mentor or get into research programs? Ooh, an 8th grader. It will be difficult. So I would say finding a research mentor like by cold emailing is probably not possible because most labs don't allow you to work until you're above 16 or above. As for research programs, there are not many summer research programs for like people so young, but I actually I am actually running a research camp. I ran one last year and we had people as young as 7th grade. So we're going to run this research camp again like next summer, and possibly that will maybe one of the only ones that takes people so young. So the answer is like it is definitely going to be difficult, but you can try and look for programs. I think UCSB research mentorship programs, this one takes freshmen. That's the youngest one I know of. I played flute, piano, and violin. Somebody asked if I played any instruments. I played flute, piano, and violin when I was in 8th grade, and then I quit after that. So basically, no. All right, I'm gonna take one more question. Let's see. Oh, I'll take 2 more actually. Did your parents help you on your research? No. Well, they helped me for my essays when I was applying to summer programs, but as for the research itself, I did it all by myself with help only from my mentor. Are some RSI topics easier to apply and get in with? No, I don't think so. I did not hire a college admissions counselor. Okay, last one. Do you think it's worth it to reach the highest level of achievement in non-STEM related activities like the fine arts, even if that is not what you want to go to school for? That's actually a really good question. Well, so I have a friend who plays piano at the Manhattan School of Music, and she has reached the highest level of achievement in piano. And she got into Princeton, and now she's quitting piano. So I mean, like, if it's something you enjoy in high school, it may be one of the only times you can like actually do it. So if you can reach the highest level of achievement in anything, like, go for it. Yeah, it's fine if that's not what you want to go to school for. Like, my friend who played piano and got into Princeton is now majoring in economics. So like, yeah, I don't know if it's worth it. That's up to you to define. Like, if you enjoy doing it, if you feel like you can make it to the highest level of achievement, I would say it is definitely worth doing. And it's okay if that's not what you want to go to school for. Like, I think like a lot of people do music or art in high school and then drop it when they go to college. I think it's very common, but also like, yeah, I think that's okay. I think that's like all the questions. Let me see if I missed anything. I don't know, Ted, is it okay if I like go a little over? Or...
Yeah, sure. If you have time.
Yeah, okay. The only thing I have going on is a party at my friend's house, and I can stay a little longer. Did you have teachers helping you study those books other than Campbell's? No. Oh, this is something I totally forgot to mention. Right. Good question. So I've never had any teacher help me study for USABO, or like any person. I always liked to do it on my own. I don't know, like I feel like reading textbooks, you get to learn at your own pace. You get to understand things your own way. It's just like really fun, I feel like, to learn it on your own. For me, I just read the book and I took notes. But for some people, like, you may enjoy reading those books with your teacher. Like, I don't know, there's nothing wrong with it. I just personally never tried it. Yeah. Oh, one thing I wanted to mention is a lot of people like a issue with the biology Olympiad in particular is that AP biology is not available until like senior year for a lot of people. But I will say, like, for me at least, AP biology, and I think for every single other camper this year, like, AP biology was not a part of their USABO journey. And what I mean by that is, like, what happens is a lot of people like do something like Science Olympiad or like get into studying USABO on their own, and then they get so good at biology that they just take the AP biology exam like on the side. I don't think for like really anyone that, at least that I know of, that the AP biology class actually helped. Certainly, like, if you take it in like 9th grade, it will definitely help you. AP biology it's good, right? But for a lot of people, it's not even accessible until very late. So I would say, like, don't think about things like AP biology or honors biology. Just consider these textbooks as your biggest resource, because unfortunately, like, AP biology is not available until much later. For someone who's only done semifinals but no research, how likely is it to make RSI? What would be most helpful for making RSI? Okay. I'm not an RSI admissions officer, so I like don't I would feel uncomfortable like saying, oh, like, chance me, here's how likely you are to make RSI, right? But I would say it will be difficult. Like if you don't have any research experience, last year there were only 2 people who had no research experience. And one of those people was like a physics camper or something. You can get into RSI based on many things. It can be your essays, it can be your research. Like if there's something, but there must be something that really, really stands out to the admissions committee. If you feel like you don't have enough awards, then make your essays really, really, really good. Like there's always a chance. Who did your recommendation letters? My research mentor, my science Olympiad coach, and my math teacher who taught me for 3 years. All right, I keep saying I'm gonna take one more and then I end up taking like 10 more questions. Okay, I'm really gonna take one more question. You're a great speaker. How did you develop your public speaking skills? I don't really know actually. I never took like any public speaking classes. I think for me, what really helped me develop my public speaking skills was I actually taught classes. So I founded, or first like I joined a nonprofit organization called SciO Virtual, and I was an instructor and I taught anatomy and statistics classes. And I feel like interacting with a lot of kids and like having to plan classes, and the kids get a little rowdy sometimes, and like I feel like that really gave me a lot of confidence in my speaking skills, and it really boosted my ability to connect with an audience. I also, after that, I like founded my own organization and I continued teaching more classes for students. So that really definitely like boosted my ability to deliver messages to an audience. So yeah, no merit scholarships from MIT. I got financial aid, but that was it. Okay, I think that's everything. What do you want to do after graduating college? I don't know. I have no idea yet. Right now I'm like leaning towards maybe being a professor or working at a biotech company, but I don't really know. I might go to medical school, like who knows. Oh my god. So
You want to
okay.
stop here? Yes,
Yeah, we
might
can
be a
stop
pretty
here.
good point to stop. All right, it's 8:30.
Thank you all
So
so much for
Amber, thank you
coming.
so much. I think this is extremely informative. I mean, personally, I'm not very familiar with USABO or biology research, and I have learned a ton today. Thank you so much for your time, and we'll make the slides and the recording available. It will be posted on the Momentum website. I think I posted the URL in the chat room. All right, Amber, thank you so much. Enjoy
Thank
the
you all
rest
for
of your summer.
coming.
Enjoy your college at MIT.
Thank you.
All right, thank
Wish
you.
you really well.
All
All
right,
right, thank
bye-bye.
you
Yep.
everyone.